What makes you superior? Nothing, but social media and society has told you that because you are a woman, you are better.
Today, our guest is Jenny, someone who creates the space for honest conversations, where opinions aren't softened and the truth isn't filtered.
Do you think that the dating apps are making women more selective, or is it making them more tired?
I genuinely think that dating apps might be one of the key reasons that we have such a high divorce rate.
People don't just fall into the wrong relationships. Sometimes they run from the right ones.
If you're in a toxic relationship, you're okay with staying in it. But if the end goal is marriage, I think that they do self-sabotage.
When empowerment becomes superiority, relationships start to break.
Women should be so feminist that they think that they are better than men. Has broken down female friendships as well, because that means that they may not respect your partner. Welcome to the Daily Vixen. Today I have the pleasure of having my best friend, Jenny, on with me. I asked her to come on because I wanted the audience to get a very raw version of myself, because I feel like I can have a real conversation with you rather than having to sugarcoat it or dumb it down or potentially give a politically correct answer that I might have to for some other individuals who do not have the same values as I believe that you and I both hold. So I am so happy that you agreed to come on. I know that this isn't your total cup of tea, but I'm so happy that you came. And I am ready to be grilled by you so that we can have this raw, totally Vixen-related conversation.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and to be able to have this conversation with you. So, I mean, this hasn't been us for a while now. We are happily married. But do you feel that women are actually happier being single now?
I think that social media would like the world to believe that women are happier single now. I think that there is this figment that being single and independent and not needing a man is the ultra cool thing. But do I think that those women are actually happier? No, I don't. I think that genetically and biologically and theoretically and theologically, we were built to find companionship and to share life with one another and to go through the ups and downs and the struggles and the joys together with someone. So do I think that women being single indefinitely are happier than women who are married and in committed relationships? No, I definitely don't think that, despite social media wanting to hype up the idea of this single woman. I just don't think that it's realistic.
And do you think that some women prefer to be single because they have a fear for a healthy, stable love?
I definitely think that women self-sabotage quite often in their relationships. I don't think that it's just limited to women either. I think that both men and women who have been significantly hurt in their past or have had traumatic childhoods and have not been shown a good, loving relationship as one to model can completely self-sabotage because they're afraid that the other shoe is going to drop at some point. So they want to be the first person to exit the relationship, despite it maybe being the best one that they've ever been in. They're afraid to open themselves up because they are afraid that if they do it this one last time, that it's going to be the one that actually breaks their entire crystal facade. They are so afraid that they're not going to recover from this next heartbreak that they just completely derail stable relationships. And I think that that's also why people are so gravitational towards toxic relationships. If you're in a toxic relationship and you know that it's not going to work and it's not going to last for forever, you're okay with staying in it despite everyone else seeing that it is a train destined for derailment. But because you know the end goal, which is it's going to derail, you just stay in it. But if the end goal is marriage and and endless happiness and companionship, and you're so afraid that that train's going to derail without it being your decision, I think that they do self-sabotage because it's healthy, because it's good, because it feels good, because they're so afraid of what has happened in the past.
And do you think that's one of the reasons why women are less willing to settle down than ever before, or is there some other reason?
Again, I think that it's not just women who shy away from good relationships because they're afraid of being hurt, but specifically as it pertains to women nowadays being less likely to settle down in general. I think that that goes back to my first answer, is that social media tells you that you don't need a man, that you can be this highly independent woman who can do everything herself, and therefore she needs no one else to be this highly successful and happy individual. And while I believe that women and everyone in general should find within themselves something within themselves that brings them happiness and contentment and peace, I don't think that hyping up this unrealistic viewpoint as women don't need men is a great thing, even though social media does it on a consistent basis. But at the end of the day, every living organism wants companionship. You see it in animals. You see it in plants. People, plants, animals thrive together. So I think that women are not settling down now, not because it makes them happy, but because society has told them that this is the new height that will give you some notoriety as being successful. But I think that that's the wrong pitch that people are following. I think that it's also a gimmick to pit men and women against each other. But more importantly, I think that it also creates this exceedingly large divide amongst women, and women do it to themselves. There are women who will absolutely put down other women who have fallen back into a traditional role, despite them being very successful in the employment realm. They just say that they can't believe that they have to ask their husband for permission, or they can't believe that they would opt for a family vacation other than a single girls' weekend with their friends. These are all things that are specifically designed to kind of ruin relationships and ruin a woman's sense of belonging within her family for really no benefit at all. Because at the end of the day, is it going to be your friends who are going to be there to take care of you when something terrible happens? Or is it going to be the person that's committed to you to be there through sickness and in health? Is it going to be your friends who come to watch your extracurricular activities? Or are you going to be the one that should be watching your children? And so I think that society and women in general have pitted themselves against one another to say, you're not doing what women should do because we need to show that we're better than men. When in reality, if women could just get behind each other and support each other and say, everyone is going to make their own path and I'm good with that, then we wouldn't have so much hatred. But social media platforms have given people a voice that otherwise wouldn't have one, that are very, very sad and not happy with themselves. But for purposes of social media, they want to present this perfect facade. And it really falls apart outside of Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube.
And part of social media is also the lovely dating apps that, thank goodness, we've gotten away from.
Yes. I can't imagine having to go back to dating now. Back to the first question, is that, don't get me wrong, dating can be very fun, but at the end of the day, it's also exceedingly depressing. It can be frustrating. It can make you question everything about yourself. It can give you self-complexes. And so I think that if you're constantly single, either you're not putting yourself out there out of fear, or you have been conditioned to only present yourself to a subsect of people because other people in the dating pool have consistently put you down. So I can't imagine going back to being single and being super happy about it. Yes, I could lean into all of the other things that make me happy, but being in a committed married relationship, I think, is kind of pivotal to my own success.
Yeah, I mean, you sort of answered my next question. I know for me, this was exhausting, but do you think that the dating apps are making women more selective, or is it making them more tired?
I genuinely think that dating apps might be one of the key reasons that we have such a high divorce rate. And that there is so many children with separated parents. I think that dating apps make it exceedingly easy to find the next one. It has also taken away completely the idea that there needs to actually be some sort of a courtship, that there needs to be some sort of a foundation for a relationship, that you actually have to get to know someone to get the courage to ask them out for dinner, to a movie, and God forbid, engage in sex. Because now dating relationships essentially can just be, here's today's bedmate, here's tomorrow's bedmate, here's Thursday's bedmate, because that's what the instant gratification of a dating app is. It also overinflates egos of some individuals and can completely debilitate other individuals who may not just be photogenic or may not be technologically savvy, but they are wonderful candidates for dating in the real world. But because of this technological dating world now, it's very difficult. And I think that it's just making people tired. I also think that it makes people not know how to interact with one another ever. I mean, if all of your social interaction includes being online, posting your life on Instagram, and only having those very, very shallow interactions, or interacting with other gamers around the world, playing more hours on Call of Duty than have existed in the entire Earth's existence. That's problematic because you're not going out. You're not learning how to have conversational skills. You're not learning how to get over that almost crippling anxiety of, going over to someone you find attractive to say, hey, I would like to get to know you, or buying someone a drink, because everything is from the convenience of your own home, sitting there on the couch in your pajamas. You don't really have to do anything to then have your next bedmate tomorrow. So I really don't think that it's advanced our dating pool or our dating techniques. I genuinely think that it has deteriorated relationships as a whole, and that everyone kind of gets to a point where they're just really tired, because either they're going to settle for the wrong person because they're tired of going on 100 dates, because you can have that many with a dating app, or they settle for the wrong person because they're constantly going for the wrong type of person that isn't compatible with them on a dating app.
I find that all very true. I found that exhausting. With you had to play mostly people, they were a certain way on the internet or in their profile, and then you had to act chill when it came to that, and not come off too excited. So I would say, do you think that there is a pressure for girls to be chill in dating, or should they still remain being their authentic, excited self? I
do think that, again, dating has completely taken a 360. And I say that because if you go back to the 1900s, even to the 1920s, all the way up to the 1950s, there was this concept of courting. You would approach someone's parents to let them know that you were interested in their daughter. And there was this whole entire courtship where everyone could be nervous. They were allowed to be a little bit embarrassed, or, to slowly get to know one another. And then it was able to build something that was really real. And then that has slowly deteriorated over time, wherein now both men and women, I think, I'm not going to dog men in this area, and I'm not going to give a pass to women by any means in this area either, is that today's dating standards of going on Tinder or going on Bumble or going on even sliding into someone's DMs, you have created this environment where no one actually has any individual capital for their relationship status, meaning that people will slide into people's DMs that are married. People will have affairs with people that are married. People will use Tinder for one night stands, despite them giving a whole entire spiel on their profile that they're trying to look for the one and they're not. So I genuinely think that there is no capital for men or women anymore in the dating pool if you fall into the categories of only going onto these dating websites and not trying to pursue people that you have shared or similar interests in. I think that that's one of the largest issues, is that dating apps bring together people who would otherwise have never met. And maybe that's fantastic because sometimes opposites do attract. But for a long-term marriage or relationship, I think that you need to find someone that matches your ideals, that has similar backgrounds, that has similar hobbies, because it's very, very difficult in today's age to mesh two drastically different cultures, to match and mesh two drastically different political climates, because there's just going to be too much turmoil for these two individuals. But when you slap them together on a dating app, and of course you're not going to put down the controversial topics, because that would automatically get you swiped right and swipe left for certain people. So you don't put that out about yourself. You're putting out your fake self about how you have to be chill about everything. And that's because everyone's just doing it on the surface level. So I do think that dating apps specifically have created this environment where no one's real or authentic at all. Because to be real and authentic means that you're going to more than likely rub 80% of the people wrong in one way or the other, because you weren't meant to be compatible with that many people. You're meant to be compatible with individuals who have the same mentality as you, and that's how you guys are going to make it through tough times. And so, yeah, I think that dating apps make women chill about things that they otherwise would not be chill about if society wasn't telling them that this is how you find your new mate.
And, you know, with compatibility, you have to have compatibility also within your female friendships. So would you think that, what are some of the reasons that women these days are outgrowing their circles of women? Would you think it's the politics? Would you think it's just how people are seeing their relationships go in a different direction and away from that person? What do you think the reason is?
I think that there are several different reasons why women friends grow apart. Again, I think that society has trained women now, which I think is a real disservice to women in general, to really each other against one another. I know that there's this adage and this saying that says, like, men think that women dress for them, but in reality, women are only dressing to impress other women. At a base level, men find their partners sexy in sweatpants and a t-shirt. And innately women know this, is that yes, they want to look good for their man, but it's not to impress other men. It's to make other women jealous that their man has a woman that looks like them. So I think that you have to start with the base level that society has gotten to a point where women aren't very nice to each other anymore. And so because of that, women can drift apart, because one woman might see their worth and say, you know what, we're only friends because we've been friends for so long, but you're not really nice to me. And I know my own self-worth. And so we've just grown apart. Time has grown apart. Our life's no longer aligned together. I think that probably in the last 10 years, politics has played a huge role in splitting up really good friendships otherwise that were very compatible before political viewpoints dragged one another apart. I think that not being cognizant of your friends' viewpoints on social issues, political issues, religious issues, sexual identity issues can create this divide. I also think that women will leave friendships when they believe that they don't have a opportunity to voice their opinion without being berated or attacked when they provide that opportunity for their friends. So I think that, again, it's women are seeing their own value and protecting their own peace by leaving these relationships that quite honestly are abusive, because women are mean to one another. They belittle each other. If you don't believe exactly what they say, they don't want to be your friend. Whereas maybe on your end, the person leaving doesn't feel the same. They feel like it's okay to have differences of opinions and for us to negotiate and have very good, healthy arguments over it, but that it's not going to end our relationships. But that's not the case anymore, which you can see is rampant on social media. It's rampant within the entertainment industry. If someone says something that someone doesn't agree with, they immediately say to cancel them. That's the same type of things that are happening in friendships. And if someone doesn't bow down to those threats, then the relationship ends. I also think that this notion that women should be so feminist that they think that they are better than men has broken down female friendships as well, because that means that they may not respect your partner. They may not respect the way that your relationship works because you have a traditional relationship in marriage. And then that pulls people apart as well. So I think that the us versus them mentality that has been created by these social issues, these religious issues, these political issues has created an environment for people to have to separate for everyone's benefit because they're just dragging each other down. I also think that as someone becomes more and more successful, they have to leave behind friends, specifically women friends, that don't want to see them succeed. And that's very, very hard because you genuinely in the back of your mind believe that your friends want the best for you, but sometimes that's not true. And sometimes it takes a very long time to see that they're sabotaging, that they make tiny little minute comments that are really kind of bitchy and not nice. And it comes a time where you just say, I'm worth way more than this. And I want to surround myself by people who want to see me thrive, who are as successful as me or better, because that's where I want to be and beyond. And you've got to leave the others behind.
And when these female friendships end, do you believe that these hurt harder than a regular relationship with a significant other?
I think that when female friendships end, they are absolutely devastating. And I think that absent a divorce from a really, really healthy relationship or, a death of a partner, the breakup, so to speak, of a female friendship can be way harder than any breakup you've had in the past. And that's because they probably were there for you through those breakups. You've also been able to grow. You've seen each other go through, sometimes traumatic events, the birth of children. You've been each other's weddings. So it's like you're losing an entire part of yourself, and it's devastating. So I do think that they can be much more difficult than your standard breakup with a boyfriend or a girlfriend that you've had, for a year or 2 years or even 5 years, because most of the time these romances between your friends have spanned years.
Completely agree with that. You grow up with these people and you think you're going to be best friends forever, but then you truly see that they're just been using you, or they don't want the best for you, like you said. I know I've been through one of those recently, so I can agree with that. Do you believe that being a strong, independent woman can feel exhausting?
Oh God, yes. I think that someone who is independent, meaning that they don't need someone to provide for them, but they want someone to provide for them, and an independent woman who is not afraid of their shadow, and someone who's outspoken, someone who might have to navigate life within a predominantly male dominated industry is an exhausting place to be. I also think that someone who is strongly opinionated, but also very cognizant about not wanting to completely blow up every relationship that they have with their friends, family, or otherwise, or even employees, can be an exhausting life to live, because you've constantly got to be able to make sure that you're putting yourself first, that you're meeting or exceeding your goals, that you're evaluating your goals to make sure that you don't have to adjust and pivot, that you're keeping and surrounding yourself with those individuals who are supportive, while figuring out crafty ways to be able to kind of backtrack out of relationships that are harmful without just outright burning down bridges. Because yeah, it would be wonderful to go around burning every bridge that there is. But realistically, a true, strong, and independent woman realizes that that's not necessarily the best course of action, because every single person in your life is going to have some sort of capital that brings value to your life. And if they don't, you can usually back out without them even noticing. So it's an exhausting situation to consistently live and to navigate, because many strong-willed women who are independent and successful never stop thinking. They never stop working. They never stop trying to create better avenues in their personal life, their romantic life, in their health and fitness. It's constantly a journey.
And with being a strong, independent woman like yourself, do you believe it to be hard in your romantic relationships, or do you think it's hard for women if their spouse or their partner is somebody who's not as independent as a person, that doesn't want to kind of better themselves and just kind of is fine with where they are?
Obviously, I can only really speak for myself. I've been in different relationships prior to my marriage where my previous partners really, really had an issue with my success. And there was an uneven balancing of feminine qualities, masculine qualities, earning capacities, where we were within life. And obviously that's a lot of why we didn't actually end up working out, is because we were not as compatible. And I came to a position in a lot of those relationships where I had to recognize that I needed someone who was very, very masculine in a relationship term, meaning that I don't believe in toxic masculinity. I don't believe in tearing down traditional relationship values. I think that the most successful women, and you can look to them, you can even use people that I wouldn't necessarily say are my mentors, they are still in successful relationships. Even if they are pitching that they are this badass bitch and they don't need no man, typically there's a man still beside them that probably helped them get to be as successful. And the same could be said of very successful men. Very successful men have wonderful partners by their side to balance them out. It is why for as many years up until probably 2010, that the traditional values has worked as a very good starting point for marriages. So as someone who considers myself to be successful and constantly striving to be more successful in every area of my life, I commend Jimmy for being able to handle me, for being able to understand that my job comes with an immense amount of stress, that sometimes I'm just not going to be in the mood for all of his silly antics, but also that takes care of me in a way that, yes, I did do prior to him. I changed tires. I got myself ready to go out to Glamis by towing the trailer, by putting the hitch in. I know how to back down a boat on the launch ramp. All of these things that are traditionally done by men, I knew how to do. But once I found a man who could do all of these things, it was a godsend for me to be able to back down and regain that time to be able to focus on other things. I could focus on the things I truly love to do. I love to cook. Yes, do I work a full-time job that's more than 40 hours a week? Absolutely. Do I still come home to cook dinner for my family? Absolutely. Do I still complain about the fact that being an adult is figuring out what you're going to eat for dinner for the rest of your life until you're going to die? Yes, I do. But I wouldn't want it any other way. I wouldn't want him to take over all of the things that I love to do. Yes, do I force him to do the dishes on occasion? Absolutely. But that's because he is also willing to help me when he sees that I simply can't do it all. And so there's nothing wrong. And I think that this is what the social media has ruined, but there is nothing wrong with being a traditional wife. You can take care of your husband with the knowledge that he is taking care of you in other ways. And that doesn't need to be unbalanced, no matter how successful each individual is from a monetary standpoint. You can still have traditional values. You can still talk with one another to find out whether or not you can go to a bachelor party, whether or not you should go out and go to a strip club. These are things that should be discussed because that's what true commitment is. But it doesn't mean that you are a lesser woman because you have those conversations with your husband, or that you let your husband go to the strip club, because just because you're this independent woman doesn't mean that he isn't going to be able to have a life. And I think that that's what society is telling women, is that no, you have to be the boss in your house. But realistically, why? What are you bringing to the relationship that makes you superior than someone that's probably bringing as much income to the table or more? What makes you superior? Nothing, but social media and society has told you that because you are a woman, you are better.
And you had brought up making more or making the same. Do you think that women who make more than their partner, does it change the attraction towards one party more than the other?
I don't think that it has to. I think that obviously in every relationship where the man makes more money than the woman, or the woman that makes more money than the man, the true dynamic that's going to actually matter is the dynamic between the two parties. So is everyone in agreement with how the responsibilities are going to be divided? If a female is the only income earner, how are you still going to let your husband know that he's important? Because a male has different requirements for feeling desired than a stay-at-home mom. A stay-at-home dad has different desirability requirements than a stay-at-home mom. So how are you going to even that out? How are you going to make him still feel important? Is that something that both parties agree to? Is it that the wife is a doctor and so she's going to make considerably more money, and when they met, he was from a different country and she agreed to have him come over, and then she resented him for it? Well, you got yourself into that. I think as an attorney, I tell this to people all of the time, is that you can't complain about something that you helped design. So if you never ever wanted a stay-at-home wife or a stay-at-home husband, then that's something that you should have really negotiated about prior to it now being 10 years later and the desirability having been gone because you think that they're lazy, that they don't contribute to anything, they're not doing the dishes, they're not cleaning up, or whatever the case may be, whatever the argument is, you're as responsible as the party that you now say is doing nothing. Because if you've allowed for it to happen this entire time, you're just as guilty. So I don't think that whoever makes the money is going to dictate whether or not there's a desirability thing. I do think that you have to have some sort of a balancing approach that says, this is what you bring to the marriage, and this is what I bring to the marriage. And income aside, how can we make this level? Someone's got to help out one way or the other. But I think what is happening too often for successful women now is that they're throwing it in their partner's face, and that is creating a lot of resentment. And then that leads to the income earner that's less being the husband resenting their wife, and vice versa. But it all boils down to the fact that that should have been figured in the very beginning if it was going to be an issue for one or the other, because I don't think that it has to be. I think that as long as you guys figure out how money is going to be spent, who is paying for what, and what everyone brings to the table, it's a non-factor.
And with trying to figure that out, and that being one of the main things that you should speak about going into a marriage or a long-term relationship, what is something else that you believe is a very important topic to speak about before entering into those relationships?
Obviously, they tell you to not talk about these things. You're not supposed to talk about religion or politics, but realistically, if you're going to enter into a long-term relationship with someone, you've got to make sure you're compatible on those two things. If someone is extremely religious and someone is not, there's a likelihood that there's going to become a time where it becomes an issue because they don't share the same values. It's it's going to become an issue on, I don't want to go on vacation too often because I keep missing church, or there's going to be a death in the family or some sort of sickness. One person's going to lean into the religion. One person's going to maybe resent it. So it's something that needs to be discussed. I'm not saying that everyone has to be the same religion. I'm not saying that people who aren't religious can't be with someone who is religious. I'm simply saying that it's a discussion that you have to make sure that you know how you're going to navigate it if it comes up in the future. I also think that people need to talk about their stances on political issues. I think that nowadays it's way too upfront in everyone's face. I mean, politicians were always supposed to talk about it, but our athletes and musicians and movie stars, they were not. They were supposed to be there for entertainment purposes, but that isn't the case anymore. So if it's going to be thrown in our face constantly, people should at least have those conversations so that they're not arguing consistently about stances on abortion, stances on the LGBTQ community, stances on war in religious torn areas. I think that these are important because more than likely, someone's stances that have nothing to do with that person individually could create such a large divide in their marriage and or their relationship that it would tear it apart despite everything else being perfect. So I think you have those hard conversations in the beginning to ensure that they don't become an issue in the end. But one that's kind of more under the radar is what do each of you do for fun? If you don't have compatible hobbies, especially if one person has a hobby that's quite expensive, it is nearly impossible to convince someone who isn't into that to love it like you do. So that's why dating websites can get very hairy, is that those aren't the things that you necessarily even pay attention to. You're looking, am I attracted to this person? You know, do they have any glaring red flags? But if not, you kind of don't even pay attention to their hobbies because most of the time it's, oh, I like music and I like movies and I might read a book, but they're not telling you that they want to go skydiving every other weekend. Well, if you're terrified of heights, it's probably not the greatest idea for you to be with someone who wants to travel the world to go skydiving or scuba diving for that fact. Or in my life, I found it very difficult, which doesn't actually make sense to me, to find a man who enjoyed off-roading. Well, I can tell you men don't really love to become your passenger when you've done it your entire life. And so that's difficult. So you should probably find out very early on if they're the type of person that wakes up on Christmas or Thanksgiving and runs a 5K, or whether or not they're the person that wakes up and does mimosas. You probably also want to know if they're the person who celebrates holidays really bigly with their family and you're the person that wants to go on vacation. You should probably also know whether or not they're the type of person that really wants to go and see a movie every single Sunday or every Friday when they come out, or they're the person that wants to get in the car at 5 o'clock on Friday and head to the river. These are very different types of people, and they're going to become problematic because one person's going to get tired of doing all of these things alone, and then there's resentment there.
I can see that, and you do love your travel, so thank goodness Jimmy loves travel as well.
I mean, you can convince people who otherwise didn't know they liked things, aka Jimmy had no idea that he liked to travel until I now force him to go everywhere with me. He didn't own a passport. He really didn't travel outside of California, Nevada, and Arizona for anything other than work. And now he goes on 6 or 7 vacations per year. So it's also registering whether or not someone has the idea to have fun, but maybe in a very geographical area that you could potentially move around. So it's not restrictive necessarily. It's just, you've got to find out whether or not you mesh together.
And back to the friends thing a little bit. Do you think that there's an unspoken competition between female friends? I know there's not between you and I, but I'm sure with other relationships, maybe you see that. And
I definitely think that women in general, like I said, compete against one another. And it's a really toxic trait that has really been amped up by social media. I see it in a lot of relationships. I see it in some of the relationships that you've had with friends in the past. I definitely have seen it in relationships that I have had in the past. I see it amongst female lawyers. And so I do think that a lot of people don't want to see you succeed. And it's very unfortunate that a lot of those people are closely related to you. They are your friends. They are your family members. I definitely think that I have experienced that in the past. I have seen people kind of fade into the darkness despite me not having done anything, aka ghosted me, just because I think that they necessarily did not want to see me succeed. I've also, heard things through the grapevine about my family not being supportive of my journey with having opened a business, and they would all hang out together and I would be excluded. So I do think that women tend to do it more often to each other, but I think that even male family members or male friends that you have had that can be maybe slightly more catty than your normal male friend, they're hardwired nowadays just to compete with one another constantly and not to celebrate each other's successes. But I have done a lot of work in the past 8 years specifically that have pushed out a lot of those people, because I want to be the hype woman. I want to push everyone around me to do better. I want to see people succeed, and I want those types of hype women in my life. And so I very, very much commend you, because you've been one of those absolute hype women in my life that celebrates my successes for no other reason other than you're happy for me. And I hope that I have done that for you as well. But it's still a learning experience in everyone's lives, because people can hide it really well for a really long time as well. And sometimes we stay friends with people, I don't know, out of just
Comfortable.
try to guide them out of the dark and try to guide them towards, something more. So yeah, sometimes I find that I am still around people who do not want me to succeed, but I want them to succeed so much that they're still in my life. But I have to find that balance where they're not so disruptive to me that it's, degenerative to me.
Do you think that part of the competitiveness in nature that's been, I feel, a lot more, not just with female relationships, but as everybody as a whole, I feel everybody's competitive with each other. Do you think that's why private lives are becoming such a new luxury?
I don't know if it's the competitive nature that really exists nowadays that makes private lives so much of a luxury. I think that everyone wants to have a certain success. Unfortunately, nowadays, with technology being at the forefront of everything in our life, that means that your private life is put on display a lot more if you have fast success, if you want to be notarized for doing something really well. People nowadays can Google you and find out your entire life's history in under 5 minutes. And I think that people who go from being just, normal Sharon and normal Rob one day, and then they have a viral video, now they have no sense of privacy whatsoever. We see it with celebrities all the time, that they want to be recognized for their public life and their movies and their TV shows and their works, but they still want to have some sort of sense of privacy within their marriage, with their children specifically. And I think that that's just a luxury that's really gone away nowadays, because everything is hyper-focused on social media.
100% agree with that. I wish social media would just chill out. Maybe they need to take a chill in their relationship.
Yes, definitely.
Are there any questions you have for me?
Yes. So with regards to your own marriage, what did you value in selecting Anthony as a partner?
How much he was a family man, and that he wanted to put his family first and make sure that everybody was taken care of one way or another. And I feel a lot of time these days that people look out more for themselves than they do the people around them. And he was one that really wanted to make sure that his family was going to accept me for who I was, no matter our age gap or anything that I posted on social media, you could say, because I do know that is one thing that families first do. They're like, oh, let me go see if I can find that person on social media. And when you're young, you post things that you don't really think about. But he definitely was somebody who wanted to make sure that his family was going to be okay with me. And I think being a family person is one of the best traits about.
And having met him in a real life scenario rather than on a dating app, do you think that has led to your success in your marriage?
100%.
And how do you think that impacted it?
We had a whirlwind of a weekend that went from, oh, this is just going to be, somebody I see for the weekend, to having those deep conversations on the second day of really hanging out. And those deep conversations are something that you can see where you're going to be with that person in 10 years.
Right. And as someone who is married rather than being single, what is one bit of advice that you would give to girls going through the single life and dating?
Don't settle. Be true to yourself. If you feel like you aren't being treated the way you should be, know your worth and get out. There's going to be somebody out there that is going to treat you and love you for just who you are.
And for the girl who's out there listening that wants to know whether or not having the desire to live in a traditional relationship and trying to balance that with the information that she's receiving on social media about being this independent woman who doesn't need a man, or if she chooses to have a man, that she's still superior. What would you tell to that girl who's struggling with that dynamic?
You can be both. You can be your independent self and still work towards every goal that you want, but you can also have somebody that comes home to you, provides for you, helps you, and loves you. You don't have to carry the whole weight on your shoulders just because you think that's what society wants. You think that being a strong, independent person means that you have to do everything, because you don't.
And because this question doesn't apply to me necessarily, so there is this idea that when a woman becomes a mother, that she loses her own personal identity. How have you navigated being both or all mother, wife, and Jenny?
I do think I lost myself somewhere along the way, but it's gonna make me emotional. With friends like you, supportive family, and a husband. If you're honest with each other, you're able to learn what you need to do to get back to your true self and have those hard conversations with not just your husband, but your kid, your mom, yourself. I apologize.
Hey, these are hard questions. I think that these are questions that everyone struggles with. It's hard to balance all the hats that you have to be when you are a woman and you work and you are a mom and you are a daughter and you are a really good friend. It's difficult to try to balance all of those things. And I think that it's important for people to know that in order for you to be all of those things and to be really good at all of those things, that it does come with compromises, because the fact of the matter is you can't be 100% perfect in every single realm on every single day, because that's unrealistic. We can't juggle all of it at 100%. So we have to have those hard conversations. We have to lean on those, people that support us. We have to utilize our husband to recharge our batteries when we're at 0 and they're giving 100%. We have to be able to have those tough conversations. So I really appreciate you, being as raw and honest, because I think that that's how you grow and that's how you become more successful.
Yes.
Well, I thank you so much for coming on. I know that this was a, long conversation, and I didn't mean to make you super emotional at the end, but
That's
I appreciate
just part of me.
Yes. I do appreciate you, being as honest as possible and for asking me some of the hard questions, because I know that there are people out there that want to hear this viewpoint, and I want them to know that they're not alone.
And I appreciate you trusting me to come ask you those hard questions and answer them.
Yes, obviously. It's always good to be receptive in both answering and asking questions.